Hi, I'm Shelley Duvall. This is Fairy Tale Theater. Good evening. How y'all doing? Y'all looking really good tonight. So, there were questions about like me being on this like little knee scooter thing, and all I can tell you officially is that if a guy named Chet invites you to country line dance after midnight in Kentucky, just swipe left. Just swipe left on that, man. Don't do it. It's not worth it. So the boss, Leah, was talking about staying on time. So I'm going to read short. We get out here on time, all right? And I just want to just reiterate something that is really special about this place. Many of the faculty here travel like year-round to different conferences and colleges and that sort of thing. This is a special place. This is a place that is nurturing. The vibe is wonderful. The people are always giving constantly. And I had a choice between like laying in my bed, like recuperating for the next 2 weeks, like watching like CNN or something like that, or being here. And it was a very easy choice. Being here is a superior choice. All right, so I put a book out this year called The American Daughters. Yeah. So this came out back in February. This is my first national bestseller. I can't believe it, but it happened. And I don't think it would exist without this place. I first came here as faculty 3 years ago, and like talking to fellow faculty and students here, so many people returning. Like I know, I have Taba. Where's Taba at? Hey Taba, you were like in my class like my first year here. Where's Jamila? Is Jamila here yet? Way over here. Oh, there you are. Hi. Hey. My fellow this time. They're back as a fellow. John. I haven't even taught John yet, but John knows me. Where's John at? John. There you are, John. Wait, there's another John. There's like 3 Johns. My point is, we're all family. We're going to get to know each other. And I feel like the conversations I have here about craft, about style, about voice, and about purpose, like why are you actually writing what you're writing? You're writing for your community. You're writing to improve the discourse. You're writing to show truths and authenticity. That's how I got this book done. And this is the first in a 3-book series I'm working on. And the short version of it is that, there's so many narratives out there in the world about quote-unquote slaves. There are books, there's movies, there's TV shows, and I noticed something that I'd never really thought about. I'd never seen a group of black women just having a conversation, in one of these other media, that wasn't about being enslaved. And where I'm from, New Orleans, even though we have a history of slavery, in 1840, half of the blacks in New Orleans were free people of color. They had their own homes, businesses, their own community, their own folkways. And so one of the big things I did in this book was have a lot of conversations between these ladies about, what they were experiencing in their personal lives, with their families and lovers and loved ones and dreams and hopes. And Sewanee's a place for dreams, but not tonight. Tonight is about revenge. All right. So I'm going to read something short and then maybe a little thing after that. We'll keep it moving. Okay, all you have to know is that early in the book, the main character, a young girl named Adi, and her mother, Sanit, escaped the French Quarter where they had been living as enslaved people, and they got out into the swamps west of the city. And I was thinking very much about my own ancestors, what they experienced in their lives and how these stories are so rarely told. Let's go ahead. What was that? I hear it too, Mama, Adi whispered. It's just one of him, Sanit said through clenched teeth. I was fine to let him be, but he didn't follow us this far. He is up to no good. As if called into being, a white man in muddy pantaloons walked past. Say nothing, Sanit said. Stay here. Adi saw the same firmness in her mother's eyes from that night she waited for Dumarche with the knife in her hand, but this time she wasn't thinking about whether to move on it. Sanit stood up and walked onto the path behind the man. When Sanit was within arm's length, Adi saw her mother produce that short knife. The sight of the sharp dagger caused Adi's mouth to fly open, and Adi's surprise manifested in a small escaped sound. The man wheeled around and threw a punch that seemed to go through Sunit's face. Sunit and the man struggled, arm in arm, body over body, first standing and then on the ground. The man's paleness flashed in the dusk, his belly like that of a fish. He and Sunit tussled until he got his arm around Sunit's neck. Sunit had dropped the knife and was calling out for help. Adi wasn't sure if she was calling for her or for her weapon. Birds flew wild in the canopy, furred animals rooted in the foliage and made for their own escapes. Her mother was slapping the man's arms, but this changed nothing at all. He just grunted and pulled his arm tighter around Sunit's neck. Adi, for her part, threw herself at the man. The man knocked her backward with no effort at all, and Adi saw her mother go limp, her eyes pinched shut. "What to do, Mama?" she yelled. Sunit said nothing, but her eyes sprang open. Sunit grunted. Adi was unsure what she had said, but saw Sunit was glancing off to the side. And there, on the black dirt, the object twinkling like a jewel, Sunit's short knife. All of a sudden, Adi could hear the garbled language of her mother's desperation deep in her soul. His stomach. Go for his stomach. Adi brought the knife down, but the blade glanced away, merely tearing his shirt. She struck again, thrusting her whole body downward behind the hilt, and suddenly the warmth of the blood about her hands, the same smell as the butcher's, and the man yelled, "God!" Adi dropped that knife. Sunit rolled free and sat on her behind, holding her own throat. Adi ran to her mother and hugged her. "Thank you." Sunit was gasping and her voice was raspy. And she held Adi close. "Thank you, daughter." The man, for his part, spoke, but Adi didn't understand a word he said and didn't care to. And shortly thereafter, he was silent forever. Thank you for that. I'm going to read a short flash piece. This is like a little palate cleanser for me because I mentioned I'm working on like these 3-book series. The next book, like I'm writing it here. Like I'm going to turn it into my editor like this week. She's going to get it by like Friday, I hope. So this is not that. This is a short piece from my collection of short stories called The Ones Who Don't Say They Love You. It's 19 short stories all set in New Orleans, which I'd never seen before, so I want to try something different. And I was talking earlier to somebody at lunch, I think Liliana actually, about like my former career as a corporate lawyer. I've had like lots of lives. You know, I shave my head because I have gray hair. And I'm like, if you shave the gray hair, they can't tell that you're old. But then the joke was on me. My body's like, now you gotta wear glasses to read. So that whole thing. I had no glasses till like 2 years ago, right? But you know, you think back on like your former life, the things you've done. And as a corporate lawyer, it wasn't all bad, but sometimes you knew you were on the wrong side of something that was happening. And one of the things I did back then was I represented one of the oil companies. I'll just say them, Shell. It was Shell, right? And they had poisoned the land in a black neighborhood on the, we call it the West Bank of New Orleans. And it's like this neighborhood, maybe about 1,000 people lived in the neighborhood, and there was just like all of this crap in the soil, just poisoning everybody, you know? And this didn't make national news, and of course, they settled. You know, Shell, there's a lawsuit, took like 20 years to get it settled, and wouldn't you know, Shell paid maybe like $800 per person, you know, $800, and you could like buy, I don't know, like a year's supply of Subway sandwiches, something like that. It wasn't very nice in them. One of the things that happened for me as a young lawyer back then is that I was assigned to process paperwork in these cases, and there were so many people in the cases. We're in this gymnasium at a high school, and I'm meeting people, they bring me their licenses. I'm like a third-year attorney, and I have to like, you know, look at their license, check their name, and then like stamp the affidavit with a notary stamp. And sometimes in writing, you don't know like where an idea comes from or what it means or what it's gonna do to you in life. One of the guys that walked up was a dude named Mercury Forges. His name was Mercury Forges. I mean, isn't that a name, right? And I just remember thinking, that's going to stay with you somehow, some way. And a few years later, I wrote a short story called Mercury Forges. And it's only like 2 pages long. That's why I'm talking instead of like reading it right now. For me, this was me. I was trying to reckon with the experience of Hurricane Katrina in my city and like do it with a way, like not being like cliche or hackneyed or like just obvious about it. And I can say that it's rare to know what it means to like lose 80% of a community, like all the houses, you know, and like all the churches and all the schools. And I'm getting back there a few years later, and it's like this gray landscape. There's this weird toxic mud all over everything. There's no kids anywhere. There's no puppies. There's no grasshoppers. There's no cockroaches. I hate cockroaches, but there were no cockroaches. So this story is set like the day after Hurricane Katrina in downtown New Orleans. And I don't know, y'all. America got some issues, and New Orleans is like the canary in the coal mine for that experience. Because when it happens to us, it happens to the rest of us even bigger after the fact, over and over again. Mass incarceration, ecological devastation, you name it. Mercury Forges. My job was to make sure that Mercury Forges didn't escape. He was a stocky black guy in for drugs and guns, and he'd gotten out of Orleans Parish prison twice, and no one knew how he did it. The funny thing about Mercury is he got captured within a few blocks of the prison both times. I get turned around when I get out there, Deputy Benoit, Mercury said, but I'll get free for good. Just you wait. When the hurricane hit and flooded everything, we brought the inmates out to the Broad Street overpass, and I wasn't too panicked because, you know, I was safe, my family was safe. I could watch myself without looking after my loved ones. Wouldn't you know it? Mercury snuck away as soon as I turned my back on him. He was in a pirogue, a little boat, bobbing about 5 blocks away, like a little apple. Now, I ran across that overpass, and I climbed down some scaffolding to his boat, which I grabbed. You see, we hadn't cuffed those inmates. It'd be too hard to get from place to place with all the climbing to try and find dry land after the hurricane and all that flooding. Mercury, where do you think you're going? I had a hand on my gun. I gotta find Humanity Street, he said. My pops lived there. Now, I knew his dad. His dad was a good guy who brought lunch to all of us deputies each day. I liked his dad, but that shouldn't have mattered. Not then. I can't really tell you why I didn't make him bring us back to the detention area immediately. And after a while, we floated up to a yellow house with flood water, almost to the awning. Mercury yanked a metal pole from the water, and he broke through the attic window of that little yellow house. And there was a shuffling inside the house, up there in that attic. And I wondered if I should go in after him. You see, I thought that this was a part of his big getaway plan. But soon, Mercury grunted out of the window and pulled his father's body out, wrapped in a heavy blanket. You see, the old man hadn't stood a chance. "Bring us back, Dep," said Mercury. And that's what I did. Thank you. Okay, on that note, I am so glad I'm not following the great Elena Passarello. You
going back this way?
Open it up for me, please.
I'll part the curtains. It's very Johnny Carson. You know, he's always like, anybody remember Johnny Carson?
Who was Johnny Carson?
Maurice Carlos Ruffin, everybody! Yeah! I've always wondered what was behind that curtain, and now I know. Microphone stands and Maurice. Those are two wonderful things. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for letting me be here. This is my third time at Sewanee, and every time coming here, the first couple of moments feels better. I think the first time I was pretty freaked out, honestly, for about the first 2 days, and then the second time I was here, it was just like this incredible reunion, and I was like, okay, I know the drill. And I came back yesterday, and it was just this pivot in my heart. I feel like this is, Adam is right, this is truly a place of community, and I don't think there are many communities like it. And to that end, I really hope that I'll get to meet all of you, even the folks that aren't in my workshop. I can't wait to meet my workshop. I haven't met you guys yet. We have a lot to talk about in terms of what karaoke song we're gonna sing together. But also, if you're not in my workshop, especially if you write fiction, poetry, if you're a playwright, please come up, say hi, let me know what you're working on. Let's have a conversation sometime in the next 2 weeks. I really can't wait to meet as many of you as possible. It is my favorite thing about being here, all the unforgettable people. Okay, speaking of an unforgettable person, all 3 years that I've been here, I've stood in front of this microphone and said that I'm working on a book about Elvis Presley. It is still happening. I'm still working on my book about Elvis Presley. I'm gonna come up here, I'm gonna be like, like using a walker, working on my book about Elvis Presley. And all the robot participants of Sewanee are gonna be like, who is Elvis Presley? Just AI will just run the conference. Just kidding, no. Yeah. I am sort of rounding the finish line. I'm happy to say Elvis is just such a big topic. So many people have written about him. He makes me want to say so much about the world, about myself. There are so many ways into it. It took me a while to figure out kind of what the structure of the book would be. And I decided to write 31 essays because Elvis, a lot of people don't know, made 31 movies. We know about Elvis the 50s guy, and we know about Elvis the Vegas jumpsuit guy, but most of the 1950s, he was just in Hollywood making movies like Girls, 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 Girl Happy, The Trouble with Girls. I just thought it would be really cool to have all of the stuff that I want to talk about be kind of separated into these, well, they're 32 essays, because I wanted to write a little bit about his documentary, his concert documentary, Aloha from Hawaii. And also then it could be called 32 short films about Elvis Presley, like the Glenn Gould, 32 short films about Glenn Gould. Each essay doesn't really talk about the Elvis movie. It talks about something else. It talks about what Elvis means, used to mean, and shouldn't mean for our culture. There are other essays that talk about cinema history. Basically, everyone from the original Bride of Frankenstein to Kurt Russell has been in an Elvis movie, and Elvis is inspired. He's appeared in lots of other movies. Val Kilmer has played Elvis. Jacob Elordi has played Elvis. In one episode of The New Girl, Zooey Deschanel played Elvis. Maybe one of the worst performances I've ever seen of Elvis. There's also a lot of really interesting stuff happening with people still remembering Elvis now, both good and bad. So there's essays about how I got married by an Elvis impersonator to my sweetheart. I spent the night in Elvis's teenage bedroom, which is now an Airbnb in Memphis. And and it's actually very affordable. Much more affordable than the Shining Hotel that Afshin stayed at that cost $700 a night to sleep in the room where Stephen King was inspired to write The Shining. Yeah? Yeah, this is like $150 to stay there, $150. Okay, so this essay it's ostensibly about Elvis's 12th movie, Fun in Acapulco. I'm not gonna read the part that tells you about that movie. Just know that Elvis plays a disgraced trapeze artist hiding in Acapulco. He works in the hotel as a cabana boy at a fancy hotel. His best friend is a 9-year-old named Raul. He's an acrophobic, and he spends most of the movie trying to decide between Ursula Andress and a lady bullfighter, and the main problem with the lady bullfighter is that her car is too small for them to make out in. Yeah, but we're not going to talk about any of that. My only prior knowledge of Fun in Acapulco was its best song, Bossa Nova Baby, a rollicking dance number that shines among the rest of the film's total clunker songs like There's No Room to Roomba in a Sports Car. The song hit number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100, and I would put it among the very top of Elvis's soundtrack hits, right up there with You're So Square, Baby I Don't Care, and A Little Less Conversation. Elvis sings the song Bossa Nova Baby at the hotel's nightly floor show, and the song advances at a lightning pace. It's 200 lyrics in under 2 minutes, sung from the perspective of a guy whose date won't let him leave the dance floor. I said, hey, Bossa Nova Baby, keep on working, for this ain't no time to quit. I said, go, Bossa Nova Baby, keep on dancing, I'm about to have myself a fit. Elvis moves constantly from intro to outro, doing his own version of the twist, and as he swivels, his quick feet shuffle in counter rhythm with his hips, and his hands break at the wrist with a Dean Martin suavity. I first heard Bossa Nova Baby at an Elvis tribute artist contest in Memphis 3 years before I'd seen any Elvis movie. The Elvis tribute artist, or ETA circuit, they don't like to be called impersonators, they like to be called tribute artists, is 75% jumpsuit tributes, and most of the remaining performers cover the 50s concerts. The movie-era Elvises are the rarest ETAs of all, and that's why I took note when a 21-year-old named Austin Irby ran on stage in a cream-colored dinner jacket and black trousers, the nightclub costume from Fun in Acapulco, I would later learn. Irby launched into Bossa Nova Baby at full tempo, and his ebullience lifted the room. It was swingin' Elvis, aerobic Elvis, an Elvis wearing an outfit in which the shirt and pants are not attached. A laconic Aloha from Hawaii concert tribute ended up winning that contest, but that Bossa Nova kid is who stuck with me, mostly for selfish reasons. I'd been following the Presley tribute community for months on YouTube, wormholing my way down years of tournament footage and marveling at the pros who snagged the top purses. Many Elvis tribute stars have crackerjack names that I pray that they were born with. Mississippi's Cody Ray Slaughter, Brazil's Diogo Light. There is even a guy from Amsterdam named Dwight Eisenhower. Emphasis on guy here. Even though they represent multiple countries, ethnicities, and ages, literally all the competitors at this top ETA tier are men. But because I am both a performance hound and a low-key narcissist, I couldn't help imagining myself in the position of these champs. Really, the idea of infiltrating an all-boys affair further sweetened my ETA fantasies. I could be like the champion lady bullfighter of Fun in Acapulco, minus all the pointy brassieres and making out in tiny roadsters. As Austin Irby bopped for the crowd in his nightclub garb, I noticed the mercifully short runtime of Bossa Nova Baby, as well as its higher-pitched melody. I'm far from a soprano, as you can hear, but many of Elvis's Vegas-era songs are full baritone numbers that I could never manage, even after rigorous voice workouts. But Bossa Nova was basically an alto tune. Plus, it required an easy costume compared to those expensive and elaborate jumpsuits. I mean, who doesn't own a pair of black slacks? I also figured that a deep cut like Bossa Nova carried lower expectations, since the song, while a straight-up banger, is much less iconic. It's neither as explosive as the work of 50s Elvis, nor as steeped in manly pathos as Jumpsuit Presley. Lo and behold, I found a mode of Elvising within my ability and my budget. Maybe movie Elvis was the Elvis for me. And then, about a year after I heard Bossa Nova for the first time, an editor pal named Naila called me to see if I had a pitch for the live magazine that she ran. It's a unique enterprise called Pop-Up Magazine that tasks writers with not just reporting a story, but dramatically presenting it before huge audiences, while backed by animation, theatrical lights, and a band. Was I working on anything with an aspect of performance connected to it, she asked. Well, there is this one thing, I told her. At Pop-Up's Spring 2022 tour across several major cities, I would offer a primer on the male-dominated world of Elvis tribute artistry. And then, for the last 2 minutes of the story, I'd bring that ETA world, gender bent, into the theater by singing Bossa Nova Baby after quick changing on stage into the best Elvis garb we could get for $300. Naila would help me shape the piece, and Pop-Up would design the lights and music, but learning how to perform Bossa Nova was on me. I had 4 months. The first order of business was to track down Austin Irby, my Bossa Nova Baby gateway drug. And it turns out that he lives in Honeypath, South Carolina, only 20 miles away from my mom. That broke the ice when I cold called him, and he told me, he was like, what? He was in the phone book, man. He told me that Bossa Nova Baby was the second Elvis song he ever learned, back when he was a teen ETA, performing 50s Elvis with 70s sideburns, AKA I had no clue what I was doing. He connected to the rapid-fire energy of the song, and it's still one of his signature numbers to this day, along with Mean Woman Blues from the movie Loving You. 90% of where I go, I'm going to do those songs, he said. The judges are probably sick of hearing them, but I'll keep doing it until they stop scoring me high. I wanted to know how he practiced the song to get those high scores, or even how he got comfortable enough to attempt it. Watching Elvis, he said, but you have to study not only the moves and the clothes, but the facial characteristics, the way he walked, the way he moved his hands. To prep his suitcase aria, young Irby watched Fun in Acapulco on repeat. Rewind, fast forward, to get all the certain parts. I hate using the word mimic, he said, but that is the best way to describe it. You still got to know that you're never going to be Elvis. There's only one Elvis, we all know that, but you want to get as close as you possibly can. But once you've established a bossa nova foundation, he told me, your next step is to move away from Elvis and find your own rhythm inside the framework of the tribute. Elvis did what he felt and could care less what it looked like, and that's why it was so smooth and so fluent, he said. He was just being him, doing what he wanted to do. You have to remember that in your head so that you aren't robotic. So I started training with Elvis in my ears, singing Bossa Nova Baby's rapid-fire lyrics with Presley while I did the dishes or took an evening walk. I found myself hunting the little ticks and southern tells in Elvis's delivery. Every my in the song sounds like ma, and there's a hint of an I sound in the vowel centers of head and even work. Elvis has a way of pronouncing the letter S, especially at the start of words, so that the consonant aspirates lower in the mouth. And the baby of his Hey Bossa Nova Baby sports that mid-lip bounce that countless parodies love to exaggerate. And when I could put it off no further, I began to focus on my body, retreating to a bay of my garage that I converted into a COVID-era gym. I queued up a YouTube video of Bossa Nova from Fun in Acapulco because the only time Elvis ever performed this song was for the film. And then I slowed the clip to 0.25 speed and danced along in slow motion. The steps that Elvis executes are simpler than a Zumba class, just shuffling feet to the left and the right, but Elvis does them in this fluid blur, adding all these tiny flourishes to his bendable spots. There's a stylish control that unites his moves, a kinetic force that drives all of Presley's best choices from the inside. When I turned to the mirror, however, I saw how little my bossa nova resembled Elvis's. Anytime I'd ever been tasked with choreo, from musical theater to step aerobics, I was taught to complete the moves with so-called womanly flourishes. You point the toe to extend the leg line. You stretch the arms high above the head, and you hyperflex the fingertips. And while Elvis is no stranger to the shimmy, I can't shimmy without engaging whatever back muscles trigger a full-blown charo across the front of my torso, shaking the parts of me that resemble Elvis the least, coochie, coochie, coochie. Despondent, I found a YouTube video posted by an actor from the Sun Studios jukebox musical $1 Million Quartet. In this clip, he's tutoring another actor who's about to take on the Elvis role. Both of the men wear muscle tees and gym shorts, and they use what looks like an unshaded floor lamp as a 50s-era microphone stand. The thing with Elvis, the actor explains, is that you look like a fucking idiot until you don't. He then demonstrates a classic Elvis starting posture, bouncing lightly on his toes, and he moves his chest and hips to throw himself slightly off balance with each bounce. It looks goofy, he says, but it's Elvis, so it's cool as shit. His coaching worked almost immediately, especially the advice to square my upper torso like you're flexing your lats. As a squishy 44-year-old woman, I wasn't sure I had lats anymore, but his tip produced a broadening in my shoulders that felt sturdier, which allowed more bounce in my lower half. My body started to feel like a launch pad for Elvis-y behavior. A hip check here. I'm really glad there's a podium here so you can't see what I'm actually doing. Because if you're at home reading it, you probably imagine me like sounding like I'm kind of getting it, but really, I did okay. A hip check here, an extended arm there. The more these movements feel like actual choices that you're making as a human being, the more convincing it's gonna be, he said. Wow, thanks, bro, I thought. After weeks of shameful garage practice, it was time to get into the ring and fight the bull. I flew to Oakland, California for Pop-Up's dress rehearsals, which were held in a studio about a mile from where Elvis played his very first Bay Area show in 1956. The San Francisco Chronicle reported that the 7,000 audience members at Oakland Coliseum sat there, quiet, until one of his knees shot out And when the scream subsided, the right knee picked up where the other left off, and gradually, as the movement spread upward, that famous voice was lost in bedlam. The tiny unisex bathroom at the pop-up rehearsal studio didn't even have a full-length mirror, but I assembled all the parts of my costume there for the first time. I'd brought a drapey pair of trousers, a black dress shirt, two-tone loafers in the smallest men's size I could find. Pop-up special ordered a questionable wig, and Naila found a gold tuxedo jacket at a men's formal wear outfit in Philly. It was prom season, so she probably had to wrestle it away from a diminutive Chester County high schooler who was hoping to woo his date with shininess. Once I donned the full garb, however, the overall effect wasn't exactly Elvis. I felt more like 90s era K.D. Lang, if she'd caught her hair in a tasty freeze machine. These theaters have huge stages, Naila reassured me. I think your look is totally gonna play. But I couldn't help but note the concerned knit of her brow. In the rehearsal space, technicians tended to long chords or noodled on laptops while I walked through the song with Pop-Up's nimble 5-piece band. One sound guy pointed to a deactivated mic on a Hammond organ over in the corner. Apparently Elvis used that in a session once, he told me. Another techie dismissed him. Every studio in California has a mic that Elvis supposedly used. We sang through the song without any movement first so I could get used to the arrangement. My voice was so tight from nerves that even though I was hitting Elvis's notes, the tone was thinner, girlier. Instead of Elvis, I sounded like a different celebrity who's also seen a fair number of impersonators. Cher. We had to press on, though, so I added my body to the equation. Together, the band and I mapped a flashy ending in which I rose onto the balls of my feet, knees out, and windmilled my arm. The band hit the finale chord each time one arm circle was completed. Bam! 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 And then all the instruments made a din of noise while I held my hand out in an Elvis claw, as if I was grasping all the sound in my palm. When I made a fist and snatched my arm away, they came back together in a final downbeat, and I ran off stage. You left your Fitbit on, Naila said, while the tech guys reset, and I willed myself not to pass out. Other than that, pretty good. I looked at my wrist and saw that my heart rate, which normally rests in the 70s, had jumped to 165 beats per minute. During our second run-through, though, I caught my shadow on the studio floor. The jacket and loose pants did their job of masking my curves, from the front at least. I remember that guy's YouTube video and did a lat check. This set my torso and gave me the bounciness to shift from foot to foot, popping my shoulders into a few classic Elvis poses. And slowly the silhouette took more of the shape of the icon we've seen on billboards, novelty clocks, and velvet paintings. I was still miles away from anything resembling a decent tribute, but as a shadow of the man, I was getting closer. I could hear the focus of the room shift a bit as I played with my silhouette. Elvis was finally showing up in my body, and I like to think that the rest of the room could feel it. This gave me enough courage to ask Naila, do you think that after I exit, someone could get on the God mic and say, Elvis has left the building? Naila, who now looked much more convinced, grinned. I'll see what I can do. I'm almost done. Our first show of the tour only comes back to me in little zips and thrills. I remember walking through the stage door of the Paramount Theater and seeing the framed, signed headshots of previous performers, everyone from Nina Simone to Chet Atkins to the Wiggles. Someone on the pop-up team had taped a piece of office paper to my dressing room door with Elvis on it, a true kindness. Also kind, the shot of liquid courage Naila handed me backstage. I remember swallowing the bourbon and then running deep into the wings to cycle through as many of the Elvis moves as I could, cramming them into my short-term memory right before my entrance. Okay, open with the classic at the mic pose, shoulders squared, hands down, hips, pinky fingers twitching. I said, hey, take it easy, baby, I worked all day and my feet feel just like lead. Unbutton the jacket and fling back the lapels, go up on the toes. You got my shirt tail flying all over the place and the sweat popping off of my head. Thumbs in the waistband for a jailhouse rock-style double bump. She said, go bossa nova, baby, keep on dancing or I'll find myself another cat. My friend Brad was way up in the theater balcony and he posted a photo from the first show to Instagram, captioned, ladies and gentlemen, Elena Passarello. In the photo, I am a tiny figurine, just a pin-headed army man, pointing out at the audience while sitting squarely on my full hips. My posture looks more like a motivational speaker's than that of the so-called king of rock and roll. I don't look anything like what was happening inside me, the way those songs, those gyrations made me feel. Naila got a closer pic of the same moment from her spot in the wings and texted it to me later, which was how I learned that I'd done the entire number with my wig on sideways. But my body remembers one brief phrase toward the end, right before I ran off stage, before the sound guy fibbed to the 1,000-seat theater that I had left the building. Out there alone, blinded by the follow spot and singing the one-word chorus, Bossa Nova, ba-dum-bum, Bossa Nova. I turned profile to explode into the windmill arms of the finale, and that's when I caught my shadow once again, this time in the follow spot, while I rose onto my toes and threw my arms into the rotations. Bam, bam, bam! And at that moment, I found myself snapping my head in a very un-Elvis way that just felt correct, like an extension of the freakout I'd driven my body toward for the past several months. And it was at that moment that my peripheral vision caught sight of a woman in the front row, and she had risen from her seat, bopping as she stood with her arms out toward me, fingers wiggling, hips finding their own bounce, eyes bright as I windmilled right at her. Bam, bam, bam! And then she started screaming. That's it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. One more time for Maurice.